You are meant to take up space. Welcome back to the TrailBLAZER pod. I'm your host Faye, and each week I bring you stories of Jewish women who are paving bold paths. This week, actor, producer, and writer Melissa Weisz joins me to talk about why she refuses to perform when she's not on stage, the workshop technique that had a student saying, "I feel like I own the building," and what acting can teach a woman about being herself. Let's dive in. Oh, and don't forget to follow and subscribe. You don't want to miss next week's episode. Welcome to the TrailBLAZER pod. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so happy to do this with you.
Yeah, so for anyone listening, you're my aunt. So this is going to be
I'm your aunt.
Yeah, a very personal conversation, but also I think I'm going to be learning a lot about you because we're going to talk about what you're doing right now, which I don't know much yet.
True.
So this is a fun time for me. So most people I think know you for you're leaving the community story, or a lot of people. And you recently were on Frida Weizel's live and you talked about all of that. So I don't want to repeat that because I don't like to, she did an amazing job with that. I don't want to do that on here. So I'm going to link that video so people can learn more about you in that way.
Okay.
So where I want to start with you today now is, who is Melissa Malki Weisz today?
It's a fantastic question, first of all. Great question. Not an easy question.
Mm-hmm.
Not an easy question to answer. Who I am today. I like to think that I am kind and grounded and thoughtful, and that I use, you mentioned about Frida Weizel's story, I like to use where I'm from it informs me and informs how I see the world. And I like to use that experience to help others. I hope, other people might know me from acting stuff,
For sure.
Shows that people have come to or things that I've done. And so I'm moving more into really embracing the way that, because I live between two cultures, really embracing that space and, using it to kind of, I have my experience in my creative field, for many years now. And I have my history, my personal history and background, which makes me view the world in ways that, are unique to me. Because I see things from different angles and then kind of putting it together. So that's where I'm at now.
I love, first of all, I concur. You are grounded and kind and special and
you.
The best. But I love that. Yeah. I love that when a lot of people, when they answer that question, I think specifically in America, we go to what we do and not who we are to answer that question. No. And I like that you are like, wait, this is me as a person. This is not just, what I do. So that's inspiring to me. I like that you went there. You were talking about acting, and it's, ever since, obviously I grew up with you, but I think when I was becoming more like a teenager, you were already in acting. So I think, we got to know each other when you were in that space, right? In that way, from what I can remember.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I haven't thought about it in that way. Yeah. Yeah. In a way, I've already been doing most
Yeah. Because I was really little when you started it. And then when you're 12, 13 and you have more context to the world, you were already doing that. So, that's right. That was the start of I think your career that I knew about. So let's start from there. You said that you stumbled into acting almost by accident. So first of all, how did that happen? And what made you realize that it was something that you actually wanted to pursue?
It's so interesting because I'm taking that moment to be I remember our conversations when you were younger and me, and me being in acting and that being a newer thing. I think I was studying psychology and some friends of mine were working on this film, Romeo and Juliet in Yiddish. And I, for some reason, auditioned. I don't know. I didn't know Shakespeare or whatever, but I auditioned. And the director liked me and I played Juliet. And that was my first thing. And I remember the first, we had basically what's the word? Like a test shot, shoot, right? So it was just she said she wouldn't use it. It was just, we were setting things up and they ended up keeping that in the scene. And it's the scene where Juliet drinks poison, I think. Yeah. it was like an emotional scene. And I remember I didn't know that I'm supposed to emote on camera, and it was really hard. I remember being like, what am I doing? And then once finally she called cut, I started to really cry because I was full of emotion. And I was like really messy and really crying. And she just like, she had the cameras running again and had like a really close up of me. And I was like, can I go wipe my nose? And she's like, no. And I remember being like, wow, like it was so cathartic actually, learning that, oh, I actually don't have to hide my feelings on camera. Like I can experience it. And then it's like a safe place to, like, there are no consequences out in the world. There's nothing really bothering me in the moment. It felt like stressful and all these things. So I was crying from that.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, I get to put this into the character. And then I fell in love with it. I was just like, wow, I get to put all the things that I'm feeling, the nervousness. It's not separate from what I'm doing. I can actually put it into the character and the scene. And that's when I first fell in love with it. So it definitely came to me, because how would I have known?
Yeah, it's crazy because, you know, we were just looking at your picture for the photo from the movie, right? And you were like, I don't know, should I put this on my website? It's so old. And to me, it's like, feels like yesterday because it was the first thing you showed me that you did, I think. Like, I remember, I think.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, you were talking about what it did for you, right? Like, it wasn't just about acting. It was like this cathartic experience. You're obviously many years into your career now, you know, you're an actor, producer, you're a writer, you're a speaker, you have so many different things going on, and you're trying now to actually give people that I would call it the acting therapy almost, that you experience, and you're trying to give it back.
Yeah.
So let's start there.
Yeah.
You're working now on acting workshops that you're giving to people, right? To the public. What is that? Who is it for? Give us like the pitch.
Yeah. You know, there's a lot of tools in acting that you can use in your everyday life. There are certain things that I've learned that I'm like, oh, I can feel good. I can decide. And there's like different methods of like, oh, these are methods that make me feel more empowered. These are like, and you use them for the characters. There's like Chekhov techniques where your bodies. There's like a different kind of techniques that you're just, you know, I realized like I can make myself feel hot, or I can make myself feel cold. My brain is capable of this. You know, like you start to realize we are so capable and we can change how we feel. And we have all that power in our brains, and being like, oh, I can do this in my real life, which again is hard to, and sometimes you need to, you know, you need a reminder. Right. But realizing that like these are not just acting techniques. These are techniques that we can use in our life. The more we know ourselves and we know how our brains work, and we don't have to respond by how we're feeling in that moment, we can actually like we can change how we can have the moment between the responses. We can decide choices of how to respond. All of these things you do in acting. You get to decide how you respond. And you're also going by instincts, but you're choosing. And so acting for me made me realize that I'm watching myself as the actor in the character. I'm deciding what to put into the character, and I can manipulate it. And I can do that in my life. And everyone can do that in their life, right? We're not our thoughts and we're not our feelings. We get to witness all of this, and we get to decide how to respond. And so I started to do these workshops where I'm using these kinds of tools, and scene work when it's group workshops. I also do one-on-one, but when it's group, you do these scene work and you kind of almost role play, or you figure out, right? People bring this real life experience, scenarios, and how do I deal with that? So I'm working with women in the community. You know, it's a technique that anybody can use. But I realized that there was this need in the community of an outlet for women to be able to express themselves in messy ways, not in ways of how you have to be perfect. You get to like mess up, you get to scream and yell, again, no consequences. You get to cry and not feel like, I don't know what's going on with me. You get to like, you know, like I had a teacher years ago who was just like, would call it this outside is the Starbucks world. You have to stand in the line and you have to stay your order and you have to like be quick and do the right thing. Here, we don't do that. Here we go based on like we're allowed to feel and experience it. So it's a place to like learn communication and yourself and your body. And it's all those techniques to help you in your everyday life. So some people want to be an actor or want to have a creative space. So it's for acting and life.
Right.
You know, it doesn't have to be specifically for acting. It's tools for life.
Do you remember the moment that you realized that it's not just, you know, when I'm acting, this applies to acting, but what you're saying is I get to step out from myself and look at it as like a third party, or it just happened over time?
I've had a few moments like that. I remember having a really hard time with anger in my life because I don't act on, like, anger is
Oh,
something
you
I
have
don't allow
it.
myself to feel.
Got it, got it.
Yeah. Not that I'm an angry person. You're right.
Got it, okay.
It was something that when I had to explore it in a scene, I was having a hard time because it was hard for me to, the emotion of anger was a hard one for me, that I had judgment around it and fear around it.
You couldn't access
And I
it?
remember, it was hard. I was scared. I was scared to access it. So I was like hiding it. I wasn't allowing myself to feel angry. I also thought that, like, I'm an intelligent person and anger is not an emotion on its own. And so I'm going to get to the bottom of it, like to the why I'm feeling angry. Sometimes it's okay to just allow it to pass. And then you get, so I was intellectualizing my feelings of anger versus allowing it. And I was in therapy at the same time, actually, that I was in acting school. So it was, I got to do work there, which was super helpful. And then I realized when I was learning to allow anger to be like, oh, I don't get lost in it. I cannot get lost in it. Like, I was so scared that somehow if I get angry, I'm not going to stop. And it's just going to, like, it was such a scary emotion for me. And then being like, no, it just, I can use it in this scene because this character gets angry and uses it this way. And I can turn it on and I can turn it off. And it doesn't, like, I can decide and I can stop it. And my brain can understand.
Wow.
Like, I'm in control, like learning to trust myself and being like, feeling, I'm allowed to feel all of them and they don't have to dictate my behavior and they don't last. Feelings pass. And if you're allowing yourself to feel, they move. And so just going on that journey, and also part of with acting, sometimes when you're in a scene, people are like, I want to hold on, like this character is crying. I need to hold on to that emotion. But in life, no one holds on to that emotion. And so that's also learning that, like, once you allow one emotion, the other emotions, they come through and you don't necessarily have to stay stuck in that, right? If like if something in life happens, we can be so sad and we can laugh the next minute. All true. And so realizing, like, oh, if I'm allowing my feelings, it's the opposite of being numb, right? Like, if I'm numbing myself, I can't feel anger, but then I also can't feel other feelings. But if I'm allowing myself to feel, all the other ones come. And so that was a big moment. That was a big one. Anger was a big one. And then other ways that I was just like, this is an exercise that you can imagine yourself as a tree. And you start to stand up taller. Even if you're feeling horrible that day, you're like, I'm going to imagine I'm a tree, and your spine gets straighter. And you're like, oh, I can decide to walk in if I'm nervous in a meeting or in life, anything. And I can decide to physically embody that. And then I walk in and your brain catches up. You're just like, oh, it's working together. And so, like, ways like that you're like, I can control it and use it in my actual life. And then there was an actor, I forgot who it was, maybe Hugh Jackman, like a famous actor, who talked about, years ago, I listened to this interview, how he said, I think everybody should take acting classes. And not if you're an actor. And one of the things he was saying why is, like, let's say in theater or in an acting class when you're doing a scene, but when you're doing a show, you're doing the same show every day. Every day. So for you, it's every day. For the audience, it's not every day. So you cannot go on stage acting like you already know what's going on. It's new every single day. Imagine, and he said, imagine if you wake up every day new and you look at your partner new in a new way and you look at your life in a new way, how much more alive you will be in that day. And I thought that was incredible.
So brilliant you are. So brilliant.
I didn't say that, but like...
No, I'm saying the way you're talking about it. Also, you know what's interesting is, like, if somebody opened this, you know, was listening to this podcast and they started in this point in this conversation right now, they wouldn't necessarily know we're talking about acting. They would just be like, oh, they're talking about either therapy or they're talking about, you know, personal development, and you're just using like acting as the tool to get there, which is what your workshop is about, right? So, I mean, you really just showed us exactly what you're doing and what your mission is with that. You have talked about, though, how your workshops are also about taking up space, right? So what does taking up space mean to you, like, physically emotionally taking up space in a room.
Being as truthful to who I am as I can be and showing up in that, which means I think that there's this is also why I specifically gear a lot of this towards women is, and I think in general, there's certain teachings that we have about being humble and not having too big of a head. There's all these jokes of like, don't let it get to your head, right? People give a compliment, don't let it get to your head. What does that mean? We shouldn't believe that. We should, and I believe that we all have gifts. We all have talents, and there's a reason we're all here. It's not an accident of why you particularly are here. And so you have your specific gifts. I have my specific gift. And I think we often play small. And taking up space means stepping into that and showing up as who I am. And it doesn't mean that we think we're better than other people, but it means you learn to love yourself. You learn that you are not just allowed to, but you are meant to. Right. You are meant to take up space. You are meant to show up fully and have your opinions and your thoughts and your feelings and your ideas and really experience yourself and in the world and allow others to experience you. Because what a gift that is, you know? Yeah. I love that you are like taking up space. And
I was gonna say, we've talked about this, I think even like 2 days ago. I was telling you, don't act small in some capacity. And my mom has to tell it to me. But at the same time, I think strangers watching us would say that we do embody that. But it's a constant conversation, right? It's not just like, oh, I learned how to do this and now for the rest of my life I'm doing this. It's like constantly relearning and constantly giving yourself permission to show that to the world and be yourself, right? So it's like always an ongoing thing.
You're right. It is. It's an ongoing thing. It's also, we evolve as we grow and we develop more parts, like we recognize and realize more parts of ourselves. And I think that the more we show up, the more we realize, oh, where have I not shown up? Right. And then, and those things, there's resistance in showing up. So it's going to be consistent. And you're right. Like you have to remind me, especially for me with like social media, I'm posting more. If there's certain things, areas that you're just like, oh, I am not showing up and fully taking up space. And, you realize where you can do it more. And it's a reminder for myself too, that I am meant to take up space. It's a reminder for everybody. Yeah. It's not like I have solved this. I'm a work in progress. And I'm a work in progress. That's what my work does. It invites people on that journey. And then the more you recognize how it feels when you do take up space, and once you realize that this, you have those moments that you're like, oh, I meant to be here. There's moments of clarity. It that you have the data now to back up this thing. And so you want more of that feeling. And the hope is that you learn to take up more and more space in different areas of your life. You recognize where you are in. And then I had a girl in this workshop that I did who was really shy. And then asked me, she works in a school. She's like, when there's PTA and parents come, I realize I blush. What do I do? And, we talked about, there's also just acceptance, allowing it to be like, this is something that happened. And then we also did some embodiment exercises of taking up space, some breathing stuff, and some scene work, some acting stuff. At the end of the class, she said, I feel like I own the building. Oh. And it was, I know, it was like incredible. She's like, oh my God, I can access that feeling. Wow. And she's like, maybe I can do, and some of it was embodiment stuff, like physically doing something because we did these exercises in the classroom. And then she was just like, I feel like I own the building. Oh, and so it's data, right? It's like, it was amazing. It's data to be like, oh, when I'm feeling nervous, it doesn't mean you're always going to remember it or always going to work, but your brain starts to say, oh, I have this and it has worked and maybe I can do it more. Yeah. So first of all, you proactively answered my next question, which was like, can you give me like a concrete example of this happening in your class? So obviously, and then, for me, I don't do the acting stuff, but I have like my writing where, sometimes I'll go weeks where my trainer is saying something to me and I'm like, I don't really understand what you're asking because I haven't felt it. And then the second you feel it, now from then on what that feeling is supposed to feel like and you do everything you can to get there, right? But you need that like frame of reference. Sounds like the same exact thing, just with a different tool. Yes. When I first started acting, I always asked why, right? Because I'm just a curious person. I'm like, why do we do this? Why? Oh, we know. I remember one of my teachers, right? Always asking questions.
Yeah.
And one of my teachers was just like, you know what, do it. See if you can answer the why and if you still have the question. And what I realized is like a lot of this, and I wonder if you felt this with your trainer too, we have to feel it and then we can understand it.
Yes.
Sometimes, like for me, right? It's
Yes.
a physical, visceral thing that you're like, oh, this is now it makes sense. And
To
I
connect the
thought I was
dots.
the other way, but
Yeah,
you got to
yeah.
kind of experience it.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
100%. Okay, so you have also talked about in your workshops, you do scene work where participants practice confronting other people. So, first of
Yeah.
all, why is it so hard for some people to do naturally? Like, why is it such a scary feeling to confront others based on what you've seen? And then what happens after you do some exercises that shifts that perspective for them?
You know, it's a very good question. Why people are afraid to come up as mean. They're afraid of rejection. They're afraid people are going to be upset. They're going to hurt the relationship if they're allowed to have those feelings or if they're too sensitive. So I started doing those kind of role playing things because I was asked to do it, right?
Oh,
They were
really?
like, I'm having, yeah. So I realized I have some scenes that is just, it's called A-B scenes. And it's like just sentences without any backstory and they don't even connect, but you got to come up with subtext. You got to come up with a theme, right? So you build the scene, who you are to each other, what you're saying. It's all under what are you trying, what's actually happening in the scene. And these two girls it was very clear that they kept choosing scenes to explore how to deal with it.
That's
and
so
so I
interesting.
realized like they kept, and one of them was at work. How do I step up at work? How do I stay when something is not working to my boss or coworker? And the other one was to a friend. And they were like, I never confront a friend. I don't know if I'm allowed to tell a friend that I don't like what they're doing or it hurts me or I want more or whatever. It's a lot of that, like allowing yourself. And it's a safe place to actually explore the feeling and to figure out what needs to be said and what doesn't. Because some of it is a feeling that you're like, oh, that actually doesn't belong in this conversation.
Right.
That's like triggering my feeling of not worthiness or whatever that's coming from a whole other place. Maybe I can clue my friend in, but maybe it's not being upset. Maybe just saying like, hey, this, it's getting clarity. It's allowing the messiness of the conversation before you're actually having the conversation. So I've had people reach out to me specifically saying, I need to have a hard conversation. Can I do a drama class and work through it? I know what I want to
So
say,
interesting.
right? Being like, I know what I want to say, but I need to finesse it. I need to figure out. And like, can we role play? So it's therapeutic. It's like a therapeutic method. I don't say that it's therapy, but it's definitely using some therapeutic tools. It's also trauma informed. It's also using like, some of my psychology background in this. And it's using it through those tools of what I have had happen is when they're doing those exercises, they're being super polite. Can you please? And I stop it. Stop being polite. Don't be nice. What do you actually want to say? And then we clean it up, right? But first, get it out. What do you want to say? You get to scream here. You get to feel that. You don't want to do that when you go and have that conversation. You want to get it out here, clean it up, but allow it to feel what you're feeling, and then go and have that conversation and come from a more clear-headed space, having allowed all the feelings to surface. So yeah.
Would you say that a lot of the stuff that you touch upon in your workshops is based on noticing what women struggle with? Or is it like a mix between this is what I went through and so I'm going to bring that, or more like a feedback loop?
Maybe a feedback. I mean, I started because I was asked to do it.
Yeah.
I was asked to be like, can you make a space?
Yeah.
There's some stuff in the community that like there's some plays and stuff, but oftentimes they're using the same actors. They're like, we don't get, and I realized that when I used to be on stage when I was a kid or things like that, it was an outlet and I need an outlet. And would you do a class? And then people start to bring their own stuff to it. There was some conversation, like they're creating a relationship. And one of them was just like, they chose mother and daughter. And then they were like, oh, but kibbutz of aim. And there was all these things about like how, so it was really interesting to see what they could and could not. I think that there's some teaching that it's so valuable about putting yourself in someone else's shoes, about not judging other people, like respecting all these things which are valuable. And I think sometimes people are afraid to feel their feelings, because if I feel angry towards my parents, or if I feel, if I'm not putting myself in their shoes because I'm feeling my feeling, am I allowed? And this is getting safe to that. And so I think I'm just culturally sensitive because of where I'm from. There was relationship stuff, like husband and wife stuff, that people were playing. They were like, okay, you played my husband. And then they were like, it was so cute to see, like, they had learned techniques of communication, and they were being so proper. And I'm like, what are you actually feeling? Tell me what you're feeling. Like, so we're not hiding. Like, it's so good to communicate with respect. And we sometimes got to really allow our emotions to sit in them, to be able to say, what am I actually needing? And then come with the respect. So I think because I'm culturally informed, because of the community I'm from, and because, I understand I struggled with anxiety and stuff like that. So when someone else is struggling with that, the techniques that I learned in my life through my career, through psychology, and through my own therapy work and self-development work, so that I'm bringing a combination of, like, all those tools.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think, like, sometimes, you studied psychology, then you went into acting, and, I studied one thing and I'm doing something completely different now. And a lot of the stuff we talk on the show with women is, if they feel like they wasted their degree. And I realize, like, so many women don't end up using their degree, but we all talk about how at the end of the day, everything kind of connects together. And for you, it's like so obvious how you use psychology in acting, right? Like, you're saying you're noticing these patterns, and it's like a therapeutic type of thing. And it's like sometimes it takes, in hindsight, where you're like, I realize everything I went through, whether that's a degree or stuff that you struggled with, how it affects everything later on. So I think that's really cool to see how, for you as an outsider watching you full circle. It's very cool.
It's a lot of this stuff, though, is you realize that it's transferable skills. I think in any really field. I think with psychology specifically and actors, there's a lot of actually overlap, and there's a lot of people that after they've acted for a bit will become therapists. I have friends who become a therapist, or like, because it's an interest in the human mind and human behavior. And so it's always been, like, for me, it's always been a connect. I just never thought of, until recently, hadn't thought about using that in my own work and in being able to help others in that way.
Right. And we talked about that, right? We also talked about how do we make other, like, we're working on your website now, how do we make it clear all these parts fit together, which is also huge theme on this podcast. How do you integrate parts of yourself, especially as women? We're put in boxes so many times, and learning how to make these pieces like, oh, they're all me. I'm multifaceted. I have all these sides. They don't have to make sense to anyone else, but there usually does. There's usually a through line, right?
There is a through line. It's so interesting because that is something, right? That is something that you're helping me with. She's the greatest niece in the world. But
it takes a great aunt to make a great niece.
I'll take it. You know what?
Yeah.
We're related. I'll take it. I don't think that's how it works, but I think, we are trying to figure out what's the through line, because I'm doing this acting and writing and producing, and then facilitating, because I also do a writing workshop, which is all a self-development. And, like, I work one-on-one with people, and this acting workshop, and then being like, what is the umbrella? It's interesting because I'll talk again about acting for a moment. There's often time when we build character, either as a writer or as or like acting, that you're like, it doesn't make sense. The character wouldn't say that. And then there's a reminder of, human beings don't always make sense. And actor would be like, well, it's not actually, my character wouldn't do this. And I've done that so many times, because you got to figure out as the actors, which is another way you separate and you realize, like, oh, I can control this, because you're analyzing this behavior and, like, which parts of me can I put into the character? And, like, you want to make sense of all of it. And then you're like, what if it doesn't have to make sense? What if it does connect, just because humans are messy, and we sometimes make stupid decisions, and you're like, but this person seems so put together. When you meet someone, you're like, they're so put together, and then you're like, let's say, see their house, and you're like, oh God, or their car, right?
It's never what you seem.
Yes, and everybody in some way or another, like, you have a picture of a person, and you're like, oh wait, they're not only like that, and And I think, it's good to give ourselves permission for that, because it's something also that I think is a work in progress, to be able to be like, I'm allowed to do a million different things. They don't all have to come together, but then it's also in figuring out language. Like, how do we tell people, hey, this is, it is somehow a through line, because our brains are trying to make sense.
You said something that reframed something for me, because, like, a lot of us focus on ourselves. It's like, how do I break out of this box that people are trying to put me in? But now you're making me think how we do that to others too. And if we're trying to give ourselves that grace, we have to give the grace to other people as well. Like when I see somebody that I think is this way, they're not necessarily just that way, right? It's like it has to go both ways. Look at you making me think. Okay, so let's just try right now, like the things we're working through for your website. When you're thinking about this workshop or the workshops that you're working on now, and I know you have various different types, do you see it as a business? Do you see it as a mission? Something in between? Like in this moment, what does it feel like to you?
It's definitely a mission, but it's a mission based like business. I think
Purpose-driven business.
It's purpose. Oh, that's the word. Yes, my business minded things. Yes, that's what it is. It is. It's. I'm passionate about it. I think that I'm uniquely positioned to be able to do this work, and I've been asked to do all of it I've been asked to do stuff in the past that I kind of didn't. Again, the taking up space didn't kind of lean into it, and now I'm leaning into that and saying, yes, I have this to offer. And it is my mission because I really think, I think people are beautiful. I think that we're all so unique and special. And at the same time, we're all so similar. And when we allow ourselves when we give ourselves permission, we give others permission. And we recognize our like shared humanity. And like that sounds like, so it's definitely a passion. It sounds
doesn't sound woo-woo. It doesn't sound woo-woo. Okay. Maybe also because I know you for so long and it's like genuinely who you are. So to me it's like but, people say, find your passion and you never work a day in your life. I don't think that's true. What I do think is, though, that it gives you all the tools and the passion to make it successful because it's so close to your heart. So I think when you find something that's your purpose-driven business, that is your purpose, but turned into a business, how lucky, right? But it doesn't mean you're not working hard at it. Like, I think that's a misconception that we're told that very often. Like, find the thing you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And I think when you love something, you work harder for it. Is what I'm trying to say.
I agree. I like that reframing of that for sure. Yeah, because you're right. It is work.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. It feels a little more maybe cohesive in life. It's not like work and then life.
Yeah.
Because it's not something you leave in the office. It's something you think about and it's in your life. But it's definitely a lot of work. It's probably more work if you care about it more. It's the kind of thing that I'm passionate about that is still connected to me expressing, right? It's still connected to my acting work and to my producing work and to my writing work. It's in that same field. Yeah. It's that I like to act in ways that I think the same, when you're on stage, the actor's job is to experience and allow all these emotions so that other people watching can say, I recognize that. I know that feeling. I would also feel that. It's also giving permission. It's just in a different way. And so this is a way to do kind of, it's another way. It's another angle of it. So it feels, but it definitely so much work. It's so much work. I enjoy the work.
Yeah, and that's, I think, the difference is like you wake up excited to do it, but it's still, the work is still there. I want to ask you a personal question. What's the hardest thing you ever had to say out loud on stage, in a room, or in real life? Can you think of something?
Yeah, I don't want to curse on the stage.
You can curse on the show.
It's whenever I had to say recently, a few years ago on stage, basically a whore. I had to say that in like a Polish Yiddish word. It was really, really hard for me.
Really?
And in rehearsal, I had such a hard time.
Why do you think that is?
Because it's a bad word. And my judgment, you know what I mean? It's personalized judgment. I wouldn't speak that way. And like, it's all of these things of being like, there's judgment of saying, because I'm that person, right? Like, I don't want to ever yell at someone. I want to come to a place of being, I pride myself on having emotional intelligence and being able to be calm and not reactive. And it is something that I worked on. Is something that I don't want to change.
Right.
And it can get in the way of acting. And sometimes I have to remind myself, allow myself to feel it in a safe space. I don't act on it in the world. I don't act that way in the world. So saying that was against like my values, Wow. And I was just like, it's an acting. It was like a literal thing. I was like, I can't do it.
How did you get through it?
I had to take away the judgment. So I was, first of all, it's not me. And also allowing it to be like, okay, this person is experiencing, that like when I was saying in the acting class, you get to feel all your feelings, and then out in the world, I have to reframe it of, this is the acting class. This is the acting. That's not how I have to really reframe to be able to say, this is not how I am in the world. This is this character in this space. There is no consequences for that. I also had a different exercise once in an acting class where I had to call a parent. It was an acting, you don't really call a parent. It's a fake call. And everybody has to do this. And you have to basically say fuck you to your parents. Not real. This is not real. Again, this is not, it's allowing yourself to feel it, which doesn't take away from kibbutz, right? It doesn't like, because you're not actually doing it. And I had such a hard time on the call, which is a fake call. And I even spoke in Yiddish because I spoke to my father. You have to say something that bothers you.
Yeah.
And you have to then say like this really upset me, right? And so I chose my father, and the call is in Yiddish, and it's an acting class with lots of people and a teacher. She wanted to pass, like, you have to do these steps. It's like 10 exercises. And then you use, basically the idea is that you do the same things when you have characters. When you have a character, you build it out the same way. So it's like, this is, you use yourself to say, how am I going to do it for a character? She wanted to pass me because she thought I did a good job. So and I said, no. I know. I did not allow myself to go fully. Hold me to it. Do not allow me to pass this step yet. Because it was so hard, even on a fake call, even in Yiddish where no one understands, to tell my dad that. How could I do that? Like, my brain. And I had to really like work through it to be like, I'm allowed to have this feeling. He's not hearing that. I would never say that to him. Not really how I feel. It's not my overarching feeling towards my dad. And it's also there's a pain. How else do you build a character? Also, you got to go to like, what's the wound? What's the painful stuff? When you saw it a certain way, it's not how you're seeing it now, but like, how do you access that? So those are a few
interesting. I think I'm definitely your niece because I struggle with, like, I'm working through now to be able to allow myself to be angry at people or hurt at people, because I always, again, you're talking about the emotional intelligence and the psychology. I understand where it's coming from, and so I have a hard time saying, if I am empathetic and I understand why you're doing this, how can I be mad at you? You know? And then you just like you give the person the grace, and you don't give yourself the space to feel the feeling. So I think we're related.
That's a beautiful way to say that. Yes.
Yeah.
I saw a video of this woman who's a mom, and she had this little video talking about how she was allowed to, it was really interesting. Her kid hit her, a little kid.
Yeah.
She was in the like bathroom in the mirror talking to herself, saying, you're allowed to feel, someone hits you. It makes sense to feel upset. We know he doesn't mean that, but we're allowed to feel it.
Yeah.
And I think that was interesting.
It's hard.
2-year-old.
Yeah.
It's hard to allow it. And then, like, I'm the same, like, right? Pride yourself. I'm like, I understand where they're coming from.
Exactly.
I know that people don't do bad things just because most people, there's reasons. There's right. There's reasons, and they're in pain.
Right.
And it can lead you, when you only in that space. I've definitely been in situations that that I've been hurt more because I'm not
you're perpetuating.
Like, oh, this actually hurts.
Yeah, and then you're not putting up boundaries. Yeah.
Right, because you're like, I understand their pain.
Exactly.
Which there's explanations, but I have to learn the difference between explanations and like excuses for me. Like, I'm not there's reasons, right? There's all these reasons, but I don't have to be a part of that. And like, learning to feel my feelings allows me to put up boundaries and allows me to say, oh, this isn't good, even though they're in pain and I wish they get help and I hope they're not in pain anymore. My pain matters too, and I'm not like, it's something that we have to learn.
Yes, definitely.
I think women, and I think that's another thing that women in particular,
I agree,
are often the nurturers or put into those roles, or we have it naturally, but there's often that's what is expected, and we think that we need to be in that role, that we put ourselves, and you're right, like, we give everybody the grace. What about ourselves? Like, even if someone doesn't mean to hit me, it hurts.
It hurts.
It hurts.
Yeah. Okay, so now, we're talking about learning to take up space and everything, your journey through acting. When you walk into a room now, how do you think about your own presence?
I think the main thing that I feel good about how I walk into a room is I don't perform for others, which is a funny thing because I'm an actor, right? I perform when I'm paid to, when I'm on stage, and
it's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Otherwise, I do not perform for others. I show up as me.
Yeah.
And that's for the most part. Again, I am not perfect, but I will say that for the most part, I don't perform. And if I'm not in a space that I'm feeling, maybe some days I am feeling small, I try to give myself that grace and be like, I get to show up in a place that I'm just not feeling as motivated to network, or I'm not, and I'll show up the way that I am. Usually once I allow it, it usually passes. Like when I'm not judging, it usually gives me that added. I'm like, oh, I'm already in the space because I don't have that pressure. I don't put it, I'm like, oh, what if I'm not in that networking space? But once I show up and I don't let myself feel that or like work on not giving into that pressure of having to perform, I'm usually like, once that passes, I'm usually fine. And I actually realize that I do want to know, like the pressure of it comes off. So yeah, I think that that's how I show up. And then there's other times too of sometimes I will use some of those techniques, right? And being like, also breathing is huge. Breathing really, like if I'm feeling nervous before a meeting, I will also sometimes name it and say I'm feeling nervous. And I start off or out loud. I start off like in a workshop or a class I start off asking people how they're feeling, and I name how I'm feeling. Wow. And I think that when it's a space that you can do it, you're just like, okay, I'm going to allow it to be here. I'm nervous and I'm excited. I check in. Sometimes when my head hurts a little, and just like naming it, and it also gives other people permission to name it, and then we're all here together. And when it's a space or that I cannot do that, I name it for myself. I try. And again, I really, also another thing, I know it's not happening here as much, but if I'm not sure of an answer, I take a breath. Or if I'm not, like if I'm in a meeting, just taking that time being like, I don't have to perform for that person. It's okay if it's awkward, Yeah.
As an outsider, you're very good at being yourself. I know that probably sounds funny, but you are. Like, I think one of the things, you walk into a room and people are, they want to come up to you is because you're very clearly not. First of all, you always look amazing. Sometimes you have the toothpick in your mouth, but it's never as a performance. It's just genuinely who you are. And you're always a little quirky and always a little funny and always a little fashionable while being quirky and funny. I don't think I've ever seen you perform. And I think I know you pretty well at this point. So I think you're definitely an example. I think you definitely show up. Maybe not always fully as yourself, but never not yourself, like, and I think you're also because sometimes I remember you'd say, I think it goes back to what you're saying, you're very in tune, like, maybe this is not the place that I feel the most comfortable, but you're never faking it. You're just maybe not giving 100%,
Right. Yeah. It's also realizing like, okay, not all the spaces are my spaces, and some of them I have to be in for a short period of time, and that's okay. So I might not give my full self, but you're right. I thank you for reflecting that, and I will take all the compliments. When is it my turn to give you more?
Tomorrow.
You're the interviewer, so I'm like,
tomorrow. Okay, I want to ask you one last question, and this is for people listening that, potentially want to come to your workshop. If they're listening right now and they've never done anything like this, they've never taken an acting classes, they don't think of themselves as a creative person, what would you say to her and why she should show up?
Show up for yourself. You get to just be yourself and explore parts of yourself. And it's not, I also, when someone says they're not a creative person, I don't think there's a person in the world that is not creative. I actually don't believe that that's true. Everyone's creative in their own way. Some people it's with fashion, and some people it's with cooking, and some people it's the way they talk to kids, and some people it's like, I think that life is art. It's all creative. It's because I think people are beautiful. We are. It's all part of the world. It's all creative. Again, it sounds maybe woohoo. I think you said before, you know me, so you know it's not. It's grounded, but I really believe that like every human being has creativity. We have imagination. Every child has imagination. So it's reconnecting with that part of you, but it's not about acting, right? It's about being present in yourself and being able to like explore what we're exploring in the class. And we start off again with like checking in with people and seeing where they're at. And we work with you at whatever level or whatever wherever you're at. And what I found is people usually warm up. There are people that are really shy and they're like, I won't go first and I don't want to do it this way. And sometimes we will also, so we won't do a whole scene. We'll start sitting. We'll be like, just here, talk to your friend. We'll start with a very easy, we start walking around the room with different, like imagining you're in different spaces in the room, or walking it, like meaning like you might imagine that it's, you're walking on sand, just playing. You can close your eyes. You imagine someone that you know in your life and try to walk as them. Little things that you start to embody. We have all these different techniques that are not, they're fun. It's coming and playing. It's remembering that you are a human being that deserves to play and deserves to take a space. And you might really love it. Like once you get to take a space, you're like, oh my God, I'm awesome.
Yeah.
And that's my hope. My hope is to remind you that you're awesome.
Very, very proud. Like that's all I have to say.
I'm a very, very proud aunt. I'm a very, very proud aunt. I think you're so awesome. I love you.